Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I'm your host, Jonathan Eaterberg, and today is the fourth episode of my preview to the 97th Academy Awards. I'm joined once again by Kevin Pettit from the See What the Movies newsletter, and today we will be discussing all four acting categories, both screenplay categories, and Best Director. If you've missed any of the episodes where I've covered previous categories this week, you can find them backwards in this feed. And don't forget to leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify to help more movie lovers find the show. Kevin, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for having me back so soon. This is awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. So obviously, the episode where we talked about Wings just aired last week, but we did record that a while back, I think in January. So it's good to chat with you again.
Yeah, it's cool to talk about some more modern movies.
Absolutely.
So this is very exciting. I'm very excited for this year's Oscars.
Absolutely. So instead of focusing on just the one movie today, we're covering a whole bunch of them. So let's start off with the two screenplay categories. First up is the nominees for Best Original Screenplay. We have Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance. So what are your kind of first thoughts on the original screenplay category this year?
I thought it was pretty interesting. For example, seeing A Real Pain here, but not for Best Picture. And you'll see that with the screenplay nominees as well, such as Sing Sing, when we get to Adapted.
Yeah.
Very interesting that some of these did not make it onto the Best Picture nominee list. But looking at this list for Best Original Screenplay, I think it's going to come down to either Anora. Sean Baker currently has all the momentum going right now. He just delivered an incredible speech the other night. Or The Brutalist. I think The Brutalist has been panned as such a directors, actors, it's a very wordy script, lots of voiceover, lots of iconic scenes in that. And I don't really see anyone out, maybe a dark horse with The Substance, but I think The Substance is so divisive and crazy that I don't think it'll be either very high or very low on a lot of the voters' listing. So how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with The Substance. And then the one note that I wrote down, if we're talking about original concepts and original stories, Substance definitely leads the way for me, because that was such a crazy kind of out there concept. But yeah, I think Anora definitely has a lot of the momentum. I did really like that. I like that script because of how it varies throughout. You have that whole first sequence where she's meeting Vanya, and then the middle sequence with them trying to find him, and then the whole ending with the family. I thought that screenplay overall was really well constructed. I agree on The Brutalist. It feels like it's long for long's sake and didn't need to be. A lot of people have said good things about it. A lot of people have said pretty bad things about it in terms of that. And yeah, I think the other one, for me, I think A Real Pain, I like seeing it here. I think Jesse Eisenberg is really kind of coming into his own as a writer and director. And I don't think this is going to win it for him, but I like seeing his nomination here. And I think we'll definitely see more from him in the future in this category.
Yeah, I think this was a massive forward progress for him in terms of directing and writing. You definitely can see he's taking a lot out of the Woody Allen. He has worked with him a lot as well, taking a lot out of his camp. And you kind of see that, especially with his directing as well. And yeah, I think Anora, just why I think it's going to win is that a lot of people had a lot of fun with this movie as well. And there's a lot of iconic, especially because of Mikey Madison's accent and her portrayal. Everyone kind of loves these characters, and it kind of turns into a Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld episode in the middle of the movie where you're on this adventure with them, and you just kind of want to hang out with these characters because the writing is so good and so funny.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll get to it in a little bit. Obviously, a couple of them are nominated for the acting categories as well, but I thought that everybody did an excellent job with the script that was given to them, and really kind of put that up on the screen for everyone to see. So I guess we'll move on to adapted screenplay now. The nominees there are A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Pérez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing. I know you were just talking about Sing Sing a moment ago. Any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sing Sing, I was very privileged to be able to see that very, very early at the Philadelphia Spring Festival, where Macklin and several of the cast actually did a Q&A. And that was
that's awesome.
That was very special. And that was one of my early reviews from this last year. And one of the characters based on the director in that movie who directs the inmates in that movie, the guy who was a real inspiration actually reposted my review and loved it. And that was very special to me. So,
that's cool.
I was like, oh my God, the guy who's based off of the movie, loved my review. He thought it was very touching. So that meant that meant so much to me when I was first starting out here on Substack. So getting that out of the way, I think Sing Sing is such a magical and just sweet movie about hope and never giving up, and it's just so inspirational. And like when you are in your darkest moments, finding some type of you can find how creativity, and that goes for cinema as well, how creativity can really bring out your best and give you hope in times of darkness and your lowest moments. Very, very beautiful movie. If we're looking at the other nominations as well, I think my winner is probably going to be Conclave. Conclave has picked up a lot of momentum and is a pretty tight script. You know, I mean, we love these little behind closed doors political thrillers. It feels like I feel like mostly everyone I know has seen this movie as well. And it's a pretty straightforward movie that I think has a lot of iconic monologues and like scenes of people standing up and giving speeches.
Yep.
The Oscar voters love that.
Yeah.
And I think Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, everybody in the movie really, really gives it all. And I think the momentum has been shifting towards Conclave. And I think it'll be its only one of the nights. If it didn't get cinematography, director,
Right.
I don't see it in Best Picture as well, which we'll get to. But I yapped a lot about those two. You want to talk a little bit about the others?
Yeah, no, before I talk about any of those, I do want to praise Conclave as well. I don't know if you were able to read the book. I actually did read the book before seeing the movie, and it's a hefty novel, about 350 pages or something. So distilling that down into a nice tight 2 hour film, I think is great. And again, it's a lot of behind closed doors, and a lot of that action. I put action in air quotes, is guys sitting down writing names on pieces of paper, and to make that still thrilling and something that you want to watch and want to know what's going on is a good feat. The other one I think we have to kind of touch on, obviously, a couple times in today's conversation, is Emilia Pérez. Obviously, it's got some controversy around it. In looking at this in screenplay category, it's Jacques Audiard's opera was the basis for this, and then that was in turn based on another, I think it was a book. So it's one of those. I don't always like seeing those sorts of things in this category even before we get to the controversy.
Right.
So if I had to kind of take one out, and I don't know what I would put in its place necessarily, but some things that concern me about that nomination, and obviously it's not going to win here because of all the controversy around the film.
Well, okay, we are here to celebrate cinema. I am not going to take the time. I've talked at length my distaste and not my love for Emilia Perez, even though there are things like when we get to the accent categories that I will praise it for. But I think this being an adapted screenplay, when I think the script is lousy, trashy, and not exactly, it's just kind of boring in some of the line delivery. It could also because of the direction that I do not
Sure.
love either is giving to these actors and how they are saying these lines. Everything just feels kind of off with this movie. And I'd rather take much more time to talk about my favorite movie of 2024, which was Nickel Boy.
Go for it.
And I know it will not win adapted screenplay, but which one deserves it and should deserve a lot of awards and should have gotten much more nominations for cinematography, best director. Ramel Ross is unbelievable. I think if you read Nickel Boys and see what he created, like you said, what Conclave was able to do to condense that into a thrilling story, make some changes that are still thrilling is great. What I think Nickel Boys does, and I saw this tweet and I wish I thought of it, but it's so good. Someone said, watching Nickel Boys is like watching a movie from the future. The way he's able to tell this story in such a dynamic and soulful way that really gets to what it means to be human and see people through their eyes. I just think it is
Yeah.
it's such a magical movie, and it's a different adaptation than a straight book adaptation because it takes many, many different leaps that many would not take. This could have easily been like a Green Book, or easily could have been like, a very straightforward Hollywood tale. And that's why I think it's very tough. I've seen it described as homework or too avant-garde and stuff like that. For me, it completely works. And I think we're going to look back on this award season and be like, how did Nickel Boys not, run away with everything? But I understand. I understand.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. So we'll shift over into acting. We've covered the writing categories, and first up is Best Supporting Actor. Our nominees there are Yura Borisov from Anora as Igor, Kieran Culkin in Real Pain as Benji, Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown as Pete Seeger, Guy Pearce from The Brutalist as Harrison Lee Van Buren Sr., and Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice as Roy Cohen. So some really strong performances there. We've got some real people, a couple of made up people. Where do you want to start on the supporting actor?
I guess the one that like made me smile the most was Yura Borsov for Norton Igor, because I just think the way he's able to subtly act is like really, really amazing. Like the way he looks at Anora, his facial expressions, the way he's able to convey such pathos. Like you could feel that he's so empathetic to what's going on, and you see his kind of like arc through the movie is really, really impressive. I do not think he's going to win, but that was like one of the ones where I was like so happy he was on the board. I guess the next controversy, I guess, is a lot of people talking about like category fraud, and I never believe in that kind of stuff. Like people are like, "Oh, Kieran Culkin's in the entire movie. How's he being Best Supporting Actor?" I push back against that because clearly Jesse Eisenberg is the forefront of
Right.
that
Yeah,
movie.
he's the lead for sure.
And also saying that Kieran Culkin's doing too much of his Succession character or he's just playing himself. I don't think that at all. I personally think, as someone who's a massive Succession fan, is on my Mount Rushmore of HBO shows. I think these two characters are wildly different. He does still have his like smart ass comments and still like, but that's just, I think those two characters and the way he's able to break down and like you kind of see a man who's just on edge at all times, but uses humor and like self-deprecation in a way that's I thought was much different than his Succession character. But I understand people it's hard to maybe the recency bias to separate the two.
Right. Yeah.
And he would be my pick, who I believe is going to win. Who I'd like to win is Guy Pearce. I think Guy Pearce in The Brutalist is unbelievable. His gravitas and the way his line delivery, the way he's able to tell a story and command each scene, and the interesting of The Brutalist. I love the themes of The Brutalist between the artist and the curator, and I think that relationship between Adrian Brody and him is so fascinating. I've seen that movie now 3 times in theaters, and I've spent, which is psycho behavior. Sorry, God. That is 9, maybe 12 hours of my life I won't get back. But I think that relationship and that dynamic is so fascinating, and there's a lot to chew on there.
Yeah, and I also like to, we when we first meet him in that film, he's upset at what's happened in the library, and we see him very angry, and then just a few scenes later, he's becoming best friends with Adrian Brody's character, but then we get a twist at the end, and once we've gotten to really like him and really appreciate him, he completely turns that on its head, in the sequence in the quarries in Italy. And obviously, if you've seen the film, which you have, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I really like the various levels of that character and various aspects of that character we're able to see. Just going back to Borisov, I just we're recording the day after the SAG Awards, and I was watching those last night. And obviously, you were talking about the pathos and what he can do with his subtle acting, but then there's also that scene where they're fighting, with Annie, and he's screaming in her face, why, stop screaming, just calm down. And the dude's just trying to do his job. He's just there to help control things, and it's completely out of control. And I love that part as
Probably
well.
the best scene in the movie. I'm not sure for you, but that scene is just so unbelievably
Yeah.
funny, but also kind of scary and
Yeah.
thrilling. It's
Exactly.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of there's a lot of layers to that scene. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. You could do a whole dissertation on that one scene, I'm sure. The other one I want to call out is Jeremy Strong, obviously another Succession actor, and I am not. I've seen very little of Succession. I haven't seen the full show, and obviously I know that they've all done very well with the awards from that show as well. But his again, we're talking about progressions. His progression from that ruthless lawyer that we see at the beginning of The Apprentice to just a almost completely beaten down man by the end. Whether all of that is really true, completely true to life of the character, because obviously he was a real person, but the way he plays that is so well done. And I think in another year with a different crop, he might have had a good chance to win with this role. But yeah, I think Culkin is going to win. He's been winning everything all along. But yeah, agree with your other thoughts on some of those others as well.
I do also just want to shout out Edward Norton as well, just for Pete Seeger, and say that I think him and Jeremy Strong's performances have aged better with me since time has passed. And I think both of them, especially Pete Seeger and the way he's trying to push his activism and like his way of life onto Bob Dylan, to Timothy Chalamet, I think they're again very not similar, but very interesting relationship in examination by James Mangold of those two very iconic characters and how they relate to each other. And Roy Cohn, I mean, just unbelievable. Like you see, he's essentially Dr. Frankenstein to Frankenstein. That's how I described it in my review, and how you can see him, I wouldn't say grooming, but cultivating who we now know as this major political figure. So I just think what he brought to that role, how insane the where he went with it was just like, and I totally agree with you. Maybe another year if Culkin or some other did have all this momentum, we could see him. He'll, and I think he will win an Oscar one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one more thing on Norton too. I'm always amazed at how well he can disappear into roles, even ones that don't require, a whole lot of prosthetics or makeup or anything like that. I mean, you still see he's Edward Norton, but he's not. And I
Right.
see that over and over again, whether it's a film like this or something that's, more like the Knives Out film a couple of years ago. Obviously Fight Club is another one. So I mean he's always Edward Norton, but he's always not.
Yeah, no, I loved his piece Seeger, so soft spoken, so emotional, and just so caring, and but like caring about not just Bob, but caring about the people, and like what this mute like I think Pete Seeger and Edward Norton both have their finger on the pulse of the moment and like are trying to like really, maybe not in where Bob is taking music, but like what it means to like, so the 60s and what it was for the movement at the time,
Yeah.
the social movement at the time.
So we'll move on from supporting actor to best supporting actress. Our nominees there: Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown as Joan Baez, Ariana Grande for Wicked as Galinda or Glinda Upland, Felicity Jones from The Brutalist as Elizabeth Toth. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Isabella Rossellini from Conclave as Sister Agnes, and Zoe Saldana, Emilia Pérez as Rita Mora Castro. So I think similar to Culkin with the supporting actor, I think Saldana's got this pretty well wrapped up at this point, even with the general negative feelings for the film based on some of the controversy. Obviously, she's won the Golden Globe. She won last night at the SAGs. She's been taking home a lot of hardware for this one. Me personally, she was my favorite part of this movie. And some of the songs, especially early on in the film, there's the one I think it's the very first song where they're kind of in the marketplace.
Oh yes.
And then El Mal, which is the one of the songs that's nominated, where she's in that red suit dancing on the tables at the conference. I think really gave her an opportunity to shine and really earn this one. I think this year.
Yeah, and I think it's a very if she does win, and it seems that it is likely, I think it's very deserving for a film that I did not like too much. She was the one shining thing about it. Like El Mal, like the opening in like the streets of Mexico City, I believe it is. She undeniably like is the kind of like, I wouldn't say like the heart because Zazie Carla Sofia Gascon as the titular character, but she's the one that we kind of like move through this movie with. And for me, I feel as though the El Mal scene, where it's one of the actually, I think, is well directed scenes where the choreography is actually shot dynamically and everything is kind of like going in a way to highlight the strengths of her performance and her character. I think she does deliver the best of this crop, but I do think there is some other just ones here that I'm just like very happy to see, like Monica Barbaro. I said last with Yuri, like that was one where I was like, oh my god, I think she was my biggest takeaway from A Complete Unknown. That I was like, oh my god, her as Joan Baez was unbelievable, and he sang beautifully. She just like, I think James Mangold has a really great knack of like highlighting beautiful people and making them look like the most stunning things you've ever seen on screen. And I think she was the perfect example of that. I will say one that I think is maybe also kind of deserving. I loved Ariana Grande in Wicked. I did not see that side of her. I didn't know she could be so funny. Her comedic timing is so unbelievable that
Yeah,
she again, like Monica Barbero, my favorite part of Complete Unknown. She was easily my favorite part of Wicked, and I think she brought so much fun and I don't know, made that character super interesting to me. And then we obviously have Felicity Jones and Isabella Rossellini. Would you like anything you want to talk about what I've said so far?
I agree with you on Ariana Grande. I wasn't obviously know her music and seeing her and things like Saturday Night Live and things like that. She was an actor more as a kid as well. But I think I was surprised. Initially, I was before the nominations were announced. I was thinking that one of the two, either Cynthia Erivo or Ariana Grande, would get a nomination, but not both. So I was surprised to see both of them get it. I think in terms of Oscar visibility, I think it's good that they both did because obviously Wicked is probably one of the most popular movies that got Oscar nominations, if not the top. So it's kind of good for getting that buzz going as well. And then in terms of you're mentioning other really good performances. I really loved Isabella Rossellini in Conclave. I think overall, it's a very understated, subtle performance, except for that one scene where she lets loose on the guys, and it's kind of just like that. All right, slow clap moment. You told them what's what, and I think again, like we were saying with Jeremy Strong, I feel like, had there not been such strong support for Saldana in this category, that this could have been a role where Isabella Rossellini would have won.
Yeah, no, I think that I wanted more of her in Conclave, and that's to say, like, it is tough because that is a stacked cast. Where are you gonna find the time to have her? But I think that she was perfectly played in the movie and perfectly placed for what she had to do in the movie. And then, yeah, again, I'm a huge Brutalist fan. I'm a brutal boy. I gotta shout out Felicity Jones. She comes in right after intermission, and we've had so much time. She's actually done a ton of voiceover, so you kind of know this character and her reveal, her condition, and that interesting relationship with her and Laszlo is so fascinating. The psychosexual tension between them is, again, so much to chew on just that. And them both being Holocaust survivors, dealing with this new America and what that means. And was this dream really a lie? And like, do we belong here? Do these people like us? I think their relationship is unbelievable and also super moving and so loving. So I think she definitely deserves a shout.
Yeah, I wanted more of her. I wish she had been in at least the first part a little. I understand the directorial choice to have her only in that second half with a little bit of the voiceovers you mentioned, but I wanted more of her in the film, and I did feel a little bit like even once she appears in that second half, that it still felt that she was a little bit too much of a background character for my taste. I wanted her a little bit more prominent in that second half if she was only going to be in the second half of the film. But agreed, it's a great role. It's a great performance. I love Felicity Jones. So I guess we'll move on from the sporting categories into Best Actress. Here we have Cynthia Erivo for Wicked as Elphaba Throp, Carla Sofia Gascon, Emilia Perez as Emilia Perez slash Juan Manitas Del Monte, Mikey Madison from Anora as Anora Annie Makiva, Demi Moore from The Substance as Elizabeth Sparkle, and Fernanda Torres, I'm Still Here as Eunice Paiva. So I know we've talked about a couple of these already. We'll get the easy one out of the way first. Carla Sofia Gascon is not going to win this. Period. Full stop.
Yep, she is quite out, which is a shame. I did like her performance in Emilia Perez. Controversy. I will put the controversies aside to say that it is a monumental thing to have the first openly transgender woman nominated. Maybe we should have got a better person
Yeah, agreed.
to be that person. You can look up her tweets if you'd like. But I do not think, even before all the controversies came out, I do think it was going to come down to a three-horse race here between Demi Moore, Mikey, and Fernanda Torres. But I think Carla is definitely out, and I definitely think her performance in Emilia Perez is quite good. It is outshined by Zoe Saldana, who's a little bit more dynamic, and Carla definitely brings some like super sweet emotional moments to Emilia Perez, even though I don't think the movie works as itself.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think for me, it's a two-horse race. Mikey Madison and Jimmy Moore. I haven't seen I'm Still Here, so I can't speak directly to Fernando Torres. But again, Moore has been winning a lot of the awards leading up to this. She just won the SAG last night, and in a little bit of a way, it feels kind of like it's her time. Let's give it to
Mm,
her. But at the
it's
same
a good
time,
story.
she's very deserving, and the performance is incredible throughout. And I think we were talking about with Jeremy Strong's character in The Apprentice earlier, there's such a transition from the beginning of the movie to the end with Jimmy Moore's character in this film, and it's great to see that a different sort of descent with this character than some of the other ones we were talking about.
Yeah, I think Demi Moore's speech at the Golden Globes, I've watched like 3 or 4 times. It's one of the best
Yeah.
I've seen this award season, and I think there is definitely a wonderful narrative around this. Someone who's never been nominated, has been in Hollywood. The movie is very much about an aging older
Yep.
star. It's very semi-biographical, maybe without all the pus and grossness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think it would be one of the great wins, especially for that type of that horror movie to win. And then for Mikey Madison, who's just so iconic as Annie. Like, I think she's just kind of too young. And I think the Academy, even though we do have a younger, more diverse Academy now, I do believe that they'll be like, oh, it's not her time yet. Like she'll get one later on. And then speaking of Fernanda Torres, unbelievable performance. I'll be very excited when you see I'm Still Here. The way she shows so much perseverance, determination, and just it's such a devastating performance, Jonathan,
Yeah.
to see what fascism and loss can do to a woman and a family and be able to stay strong and deter. It's unbelievable performance. And again, Cynthia Erivo, fabulous, fabulous. Some of the I've listened to Defying Gravity like a million
Yep.
times.
We all have.
Her scene dancing with Ariana Grande, the tears. She is a wonderful, wonderful actress, and I wish the movie kind of looked better, but she was definitely her and Ariana are very much deserving of nominations.
Yeah, and I really liked what she obviously, it's a character that we've known for almost 100 years at this point, going back to the original Wizard of Oz and even the book before that. But the play, the Broadway play, the musical took that character and kind of turned it on its head. And I like that she has put her own spin on that, reimagination as well. It wasn't just that she was trying to kind of recreate what Idina Menzel did on Broadway. She was making that character her own and really giving it a lot of things for us to watch and think about and chew on as we watch that film. Really looking forward to see what she does in part two in a couple months.
Oh yeah.
And it'll be interesting too to see if either of them or both of them get nominated the second time a year from now for part two of Wicked. So we'll move on from Best Actress to Best Actor. Here we have Adrian Brody from The Brutalist as Laszlo Toth, Timothy Chalamet from A Complete Unknown as Bob Dylan, Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing as John Divine G. Whitfield, Ray Fiennes from Conclave as Cardinal Thomas Lawrence, and Sebastian Stan from The Apprentice as Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is pretty stacked.
Yeah.
It's a pretty stacked year. I think right now, Timothy Chalamet has the momentum. His big win last night as well from the SAG Awards. His speech, I wouldn't say it's been controversial, but like a lot of people, his speech talking about how he wants to be the best. He wants to have expectations and be the best in his industry and be very competitive. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, why not try to be the best in your field?
And the fact that he didn't call out just actors, he I think it was Jordan that he called out, and then there was another athlete as well. So it's not just like he was saying, I want to be the best actor. I want to be the best at what I do, whether it's acting, whether it's sports, whether it's whatever.
Yeah, I think his performance as Bob Dylan is super interesting. I think it is a bit more impersonation than invoking that I would have liked. I'm not saying that makes it bad. I just say my personal preference is I like when an actor invokes more than does like an impression. And that's why I kind of like Sebastian Stan's take on Donald Trump, where it's very like naturalistic.
Uh-huh.
Another example, a movie that not a lot of people liked, but I kind of like was Ferrari. I think Adam Driver isn't doing an impression of Enzo Ferrari, but is kind of invoking the spirit of the man. But oh my God, I mean, Timmy on the stage singing so beautifully, the way James Mangold again makes him look like the biggest actor in the world. It's iconic stuff. And I think I think the final scene really sealed it for me when he's in the hospital talking to that other folk singer. I can't think off the top of my head, and like conversations with Johnny Cash and Joan Baez and like what he means to the people and his music. It's a fabulous performance, and I think easily deserving.
Completely agree, and definitely I think he's got the momentum right now. Obviously, everybody always talks about the actors are the biggest branch of the academy, so that kind of what happens at the SAGs, especially in these acting categories, is what ends up happening at the Oscars. I agree with you on Sebastian Stan. Again, we have the progression when you see him. If you take a scene of him at the very beginning of the movie versus one at the end, it's two completely different characters, and it's interesting with him and the Roy Cohen character. It's almost like kind of two ships crossing in the night. Cohen's going down while Trump's on the rise throughout the whole film, and I really appreciated that.
You see the making of the monster. It's so
Exactly,
interesting.
exactly. And I also, yeah, obviously, I think the kind of the dark horse, or not dark horse, but the other potential number one here would be Adrian Brody from The Brutalist. He's the only one from this group who's ever won before. So I feel like when I went into the film, it started to feel like a biopic, and it is a biopic, but it's not. And I think had this been based on an actual person like Oppenheimer was last year, I think it would have given more oomph to Adrian Brody winning for this performance.
Yeah, I think what Brody here is so amazing. If I were to say who I think should win it, it would probably be him. But, Academy's like, voters will be like, he already has one. And Hollywood also wants to prop up its young stars. not saying that Timmy's not deserving, but I kind of see where the tea leaves are falling with this one. And also there was the AI controversy, which I think that part of it about the Hungarian thing is not, it was kind of blown out of proportion. I think the other stuff with the mid journey, with the designs and the brutalist designs, that stuff I think is way, way more damning.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different conversation we can have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just think the way he carried himself with such reserve, but able to like always have respect for himself and always be able to like he never took anything. He'd always push back. He was always himself throughout the entire movie. And you just see so much pain behind those eyes, but just so much love and creativity as well. I just really, really love that performance. And I also think it's up there with Coleman Domingo. Coleman Domingo gives one of the most beautiful performances in Sing Sing. I'm so happy he's back here. He was nominated last year. Another guy who in another year probably would be running away with this. I also don't know what, again, A24, people kind of shit all over their distribution and which movies they promote and don't promote. What they did with Sing Sing was kind of a mess. The fact that it's not nominated for Best Picture is kind of wild to me. I think in another year, and I do think Coleman Domingo will win an Oscar in the near future, but his performance is so touching and just so unbelievable. I really, really have to give it his flowers. And then there's Ray Fiennes, who also is a guy who is a Hollywood darling. He's been working in this industry for many, many decades. It's kind of surprising he doesn't have an Oscar. You think he would have won one for like Schindler's List or Grand Budapest Hotel or The English
English
Patient.
Patient was his other nomination, yeah.
You think he'd already have one. So that was where I was thinking like, oh, like, could this be the one? I just don't think Conclave has that performance has as much juice, or maybe the performances are spread out too much that I don't think he'll be able to get it. But again, his monologue about is a doubt in the beginning of the movie is maybe my favorite scene in the movie. That whole monologue is so fantastic, and the blocking. I wish there was just a blocking category because the Conclave would run away with it.
I had to go back and look and see in what he was nominated for previously, and you compare this role to Schindler's List, and Schindler's List is you don't have that without him there supporting. So you're right. I think it's going to be probably Timothée Chalamet, but any of these guys are completely deserving for these portrayals. So we'll wrap up with our last category, which is Best Director. So we have Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, James Mangold for Complete Unknown, Jacques Audiard for Emilia Pérez, and Corley Farget for The Substance. And obviously, we talked earlier about about Anora having a lot of momentum in the screenplay. I think it's got just as much momentum here. Obviously, Baker just won the DGA recently, so he's been kind of building a whole lot of momentum there. I think I talked about this beginning of the week when we were talking about the editing category where he was nominated as well, and him having his hand on the writing, the directing, the editing, that whole process of this story, I think is what makes it so strong in all of those areas.
Yeah, as I just spoke about blocking, that fight scene where you have multiple characters yelling, screaming at each other over top of each other, and it's not inaudible. You understand where everyone is, what everyone is saying, and it's so funny and incredible. It is a director's masterclass, that one scene where there's so much interesting movement, people slipping, falling, running around, things breaking over people's heads, and it's not chopped to bits. And like you said, he has a hand in pretty much every part of this movie. I think it is going to be Sean Baker's night. I think he's going to win probably 4 Oscars, which is pretty crazy. And I think what he was able to do, I think the first half of Anora is much better than say the second half, and I think there's a bit of a lull. I think the missing of the Playboy went on for maybe a tad too long, but I love hanging out with these characters, Jonathan. I also was just like, these guys are just a
Yeah.
great hang. I just want to see what shenanigans and like create like them going into random places, being like, "Have you seen this man?" Like it was a lot of fun. So I do think Anora will win, and I think it'll be a very fun, deserving, but also kind of crazy. A movie about a sex worker. It's like a Cinderella story that's has one of the darkest endings.
Yeah.
I would maybe not darkest, but definitely like harrowing endings to a film to win possibly director and best picture.
Yeah, I absolutely think that it's going to win. It's probably my favorite directed of this batch.
Mhm.
If I had to give another shout out, it would be for The Substance.
Mhm.
Again, going back to what we were talking about with the screenplay, it's an outlandish concept, and for me personally, I've talked about it a couple times before. I wasn't crazy about the last 10 minutes in terms of the choices that were made there. It's not what I would have done, but I'm not the
Mhm.
director. So, but I also understand that she fought for that ending and, said no to big studios and, went to movie, smaller distribution, smaller, paycheck for her and all of that in order to keep that vision that she had for the ending of that film. And that I absolutely 100% respect that and am so happy to see the nomination for this film because it's so well done. This very easily could have veered into farce with a story like that. And I think it takes that story and does a very nice job of putting it on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, like, high-end B movie.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, wonderful fisheye shots that feel so alien, like, that we're in this kinda, I don't know, fantasy LA where everyone is just gross and awful, and we have incredible scenes, like the scene of the shower, the camera coming up this long, like, corridor of the
Yeah.
shower. There's just, like, so many just iconic things that Coralie Farragut shoots in this movie that leaves us totally on edge. And also, like, she moves the camera like crazy when the body's being dragged across the apartment. Get a hold of yourself, and just so many like iconic scenes of Demi Moore of smashing her face with all the
Yep. The
makeup.
makeup.
But and it's very like very Lynchian inspired as well. Many of those shots are
Yeah.
Kubrick as well. Like it is, you can see where there's some like wonderful inspiration coming into a work. The one who I would pick for who I think should win, but I'm fine with many of these, is Brady Corbett's The Brutalist. I just think the scale, the grandeur, and just how I know this word gets thrown around with this movie a bunch, just how monumental everything feels can't be understated. The way that opening scene swells my heart in the boat, and how the score plays perfectly to the shot of the upside down Statue of Liberty. I think it may be my favorite intro to a movie in the 2020s. It's not my favorite movie of the 2020s, but that opening 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, it gets me every time where I'm like, why am I choking up right now? I think what he's able to do with scale and make everything seem so small, but also so large is really, really incredible.
Yeah, and I also wanted to touch on Mangold as well. Obviously, no stranger to the Oscars. He's had a number of Oscar-nominated films, a couple of Best Picture nominations. But I was actually interested to see this is his first Best Director nomination. He didn't even get a Best Director for Walk the Line. And I looked to see what else did get nominated that year, but it surprised me a little bit. So, and just going back through some of his other films, obviously he's done well with some of these, Walk the Line with this film, the musical biopics, but he's got action films in there. He's got adventure stuff, so he's very, very flexible, very adaptable director, and I think it's really nice to see him recognized in this category finally.
And I have always just I think he just like has a really good batting average, James Mangold. Like I'll never like be like, oh my God, this is a masterpiece. But I'm always like, I had a great time at the
Yeah, it's a lot
movies
of
with
fun.
anything. Like he's usually making at least an 8 out of 10 movie,
Yeah,
which is awesome to see. Like Logan, probably my favorite comic book movie. Ford versus Ferrari is like the greatest dad movie ever. Every dad in me loved that movie. So yeah, he just makes a very enjoyable Hollywood flick.
and obviously we do have to mention Emilia Pérez one last time. I know Audiard himself has kind of distanced himself from the comments of the star, but obviously this nomination came before all of that. I don't think even without the controversy he would have been able to win here. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier with some of those dance scenes and the songs, I think some of those are very well directed, very well photographed, all of that. And I think that's, for me, that's probably where a lot of this nomination came from. But as a film as a whole, that, those dance scenes don't make up for some of the other areas where it's lacking.
Yeah, I think those 2 scenes, like, I don't think could reward a Best Director nomination. We never talked about snubs for this year, during this conversation, but, like, Luca Guadagnino not being here just really just bums me out for challengers. Adapted a screenplay, I'm sad he's not there for queer. I know those movies are also very divisive as well and didn't work, but, like, if you look at the last 5-10 minutes of challengers and be like, how is this guy not nominated for best direction or editing or
Cinematography, there's
yeah, it's just like it is just, the challenger is being left out, and also song as well, like, it's just kind of insane to me, but, what are you gonna do? It's the Oscars.
Yep, can't make everybody happy every year. There's always some of us who are mad and some people who are really happy. Well, before I let you go, we've danced around it a little bit in some of these conversations, but I want to get your pick for Best Picture. Who do you think should win Best Picture, and who do you think will win Best Picture?
I will say I think who should win is Nickel Boys. I love Nickel Boys. I think it'd be up there with, like, 2019's Parasite if it won. It would be up there as, like, wow, the Academy did it. We did it. We got the right movie. And it's also like such a groundbreaking movie. That movie, especially for international audiences, bringing Korean cinema to the mainstream in America with Parasite and being a universally liked movie. I think with Nickel Boys, it would be such a stamp of where the Academy, I think, should be heading. And just such a beautiful movie. What I think will win is Anora. And I'm totally fine with Anora winning. It is a fantastic film. I think I gave it like a 9 out of 10. Great, great movie. I think it will be, as I've said and you've said, Sean Baker's night. And I think he's just very beloved in Hollywood. All his movies, The Florida Project, Red Rocket, Tangerine, like he's just a very beloved actor or director. And I think he really, intimacy coordinator aside, I think he, is very well liked in the industry. And I think this will be very deserving.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast to talk about movies once again. Remind listeners one more time where they can find your work.
Yeah, so I am on Substack. My newsletter is See You at the Movies. I post weekly reviews of new releases. This week, I will be posting my Best Picture rankings. So I rank all 10 movies, 1 through 10, and also 10 movies that the Oscars forgot about, and note some of the other movies that I think you should all see that were quite good from 2024.
And of course, don't forget to follow the Oscar Project at theoscarproject.substack.com. And if you're listening to this prior to the 97th Academy Awards, you still have time to enter my Oscar prediction contest. Head over to my Substack page and submit your guesses before the ceremony on Sunday. I will be back tomorrow with the final preview episode where Maria Banson and I run down all 10 films in the Best Picture category. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you at the movies.